Good Tuesday morning, everyone, and welcome into today's daily Bible reading for March the 9th. Today, we are beginning a new read. We are starting up our read through the text of Deuteronomy, and I'm really excited about this read. It's going to be good, just like everything else that we've done, obviously, but Deuteronomy is such an important book not just in the history section of Scripture, specifically in the Old Testament, but for the entirety of the Old Testament. So much of what is written here in Deuteronomy is going to be found in other places, particularly in the prophets. The prophets refer to Deuteronomy on a number of occasions, many occasions. This is one of the most quoted Old Testament texts, without a doubt, whether we're talking about later on in the Old Testament or even within the New Testament as well. It's because of the great emphasis within this text on covenant faithfulness and loyalty. That's really what we have here in Deuteronomy. As I'll share just a few words of introduction, this is a series of speeches imploring this generation to maintain covenant faithfulness and loyalty as they're preparing to enter into the promised land. Moses this is his swan song. He is soon to die, and we're going to see that here within Deuteronomy. That's going to be mentioned. And so here are the last words that he has for the people. Again, great encouragement. Really trying to motivate them and implore them to covenant faithfulness and loyalty. This text breaks down into about three speeches, three big sections. Chapters 1 through 11 is the first section. 1 through 3 has a review of their history, kind of how they got to where they are at the point of this writing. And then there's a call in chapters 4 through 11 to covenant loyalty. Second speech is chapters 12 through 26. There are some writings concerning worship, some concerning leaders, and others about civil laws, and the real need to carry out justice, to be a people that are defined by justice. Then finally, chapters 27 through 34, we have the final speech and the death of Moses, warning, and the ultimatum. Those are given in chapters 27 through 30. And then chapters 31 through 34 are Moses' last words and his death. I think it definitely, as you just read through the text, it's probably pretty intuitive to recognize that Moses more than likely did not write what we have in Deuteronomy in its absolute final form. Certainly these are words that he spoke. That is without a shadow of a doubt. We're going to see that in verses 1 through 3, where it is strongly emphasized that these are the words of Moses. But they're probably organized maybe a little bit later as they were compiled for the people to be able to look back and to consider, especially the fact that Moses speaks so often in the third person within this text. Obviously, he could have, but it just maybe makes a little bit of more sense that he didn't, especially concerning his death. Again, he could have wrote prophetically in a future way about his death, but again, more than likely, someone else probably wrote that down and included it in the compilation of Deuteronomy. And I don't think at all that any of that possibility rejects the idea of the Holy Spirit being at work here. I think the Holy Spirit certainly was involved in every aspect of the writing and compiling and editing of what we have within Scripture. But it's just something to notice, because you might get stuck in the mindset of thinking, well, every single word Moses wrote. Maybe so. Maybe that's the case. I think there's plenty of evidence to show that that's probably not the case. But again, that does not in any way negate the reality of inspiration, does not negate the reality of the historicity of this text. It's just something to think about. I mean, maybe we scratch our head a little bit, like, it's kind of weird for Moses to write this specific thing. Maybe it's weird if he did, but maybe he didn't. So that's just something to think about within this text. But it certainly does emphasize, this entire text emphasizes Moses as the great teacher. Again, this is a book that as a whole is a reiteration of the covenant, really a renewal of the covenant as well. And one other thing that we'll note to keep in mind as we're reading through Deuteronomy is that this writing really imitates what was something that was common during that time and culture, something that's called a suzerain vassal treaty. A suzerain vassal treaty. What that means is whenever a king would go in and, say, conquer a land and adopt a certain people now under his banner and under his rule in his kingdom, there would be a treaty such as this in the form of what we see in Deuteronomy, extended to the people and written. Basically, I will be your king, you will be my people, I will do this for you, you'll respond in this way to show loyalty to me. That was something that historically took place during this culture, the ancient Near Eastern culture. And so it should not surprise us then that such a thing would be true between Yahweh and his people. It would be something that they would be familiar with, something that they would understand, and something that certainly fits in the historical context. So think about that here. We have really a treaty between Yahweh and his people, Moses being the mediator of that. Again, this is a call for covenant faithfulness, a call for covenant loyalty. We're going to see all the different aspects that are addressed as we go throughout this text over the next few weeks, reading it together. Again, I'm excited for the read. Hope you are as well. Let me get the text up on the screen of Deuteronomy 1, and we will read that together today. Just looks like about one chapter a day, I think, is what we're going to do for the rest of this week. I think that works out pretty well. Yeah, I believe so. That works out pretty well. So we'll be doing that through Saturday, beginning here in chapter 1 today and going through chapter 5 on Saturday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. So, yep, going through Saturday, chapter 5. All right, let's begin reading here, Deuteronomy chapter 1 and verse number 1. Deuteronomy 1, verse number 1. These are the words Moses spoke to all Israel across the Jordan in the wilderness, in the Arabah, opposite Suf, between Paran and Tophel, Laban, Azroth, and Di-Zahab. It is an 11-day journey from Horeb to Kadesh Barnea by way of Mount Seir. In the 40th year, in the 11th month, on the first day of the month, Moses told the Israelites everything Yahweh had commanded him to say. This was after he had defeated King Sihon of the Amorites, who lived in Heshbon, and King Og of Bashan, who lived in Ashtaroth at Adrai. Across the Jordan in the land of Moab, Moses began to explain this law, saying, Yahweh our God spoke to us at Horeb. You have stayed at this mountain long enough. Resume your journey and go to the hill country of the Amorites and their neighbors in the Arabah, the hill country, the Judean foothills, the Negev, and the seacoast, to the land of the Canaanites, and to Lebanon, as far as the great sea, the Euphrates River, or excuse me, the great river, the Euphrates River. See, I have set the land before you. Enter and take possession of the land Yahweh swore to give to your ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and their future descendants. I said to you at that time, now this is Moses speaking, this is him speaking about what he has said. He references where God is speaking, but mostly I think this is him speaking in the first person. I said to you at that time, I can't bear the responsibility for you on my own. And Yahweh, your God, has so multiplied you that today you are as numerous as the stars of the sky. May Yahweh, the God of your ancestors, increase you 1,000 times more and bless you as he promised you. But how can I bear your troubles, burdens, and disputes by myself? Appoint for yourselves wise, understanding, and respected men from each of your tribes, and I will make them your leaders. You replied to me, what you propose is to do is good. So I took the leaders of your tribes, wise and respected men, and set them over you as leaders, commanders for thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens, and officers for your tribes. I commanded your judges at that time, hear the cases between your brothers and judge rightly between a man and his brother or his resident alien. Do not show partiality when deciding a case. Listen to small and great alike. Do not be intimidated by anyone, for judgment belongs to God. Bring me any case too difficult for you, and I will hear it. At that time I commanded you about all the things you are to do. We then set out from Horeb and went across all the great and terrible wilderness you saw on the way to the hill country of the Amorites, just as Yahweh our God had commanded us. When we reached Kadesh Barnea, I said to you, you have reached the hill country of the Amorites, which Yahweh your God, or Yahweh our God, is giving us. See, Yahweh our God has set the land before you. Go up and take possession of it, as Yahweh, the God of your ancestors, has told you. Do not be afraid or discouraged. Then all of you approached me and said, well, let's send men ahead of us so that they may explore the land for us and bring us back a report about the route we should go up and we should go up in the cities we'll come to. The plan seemed good to me, so I selected 12 men from among you, one man for each tribe. They left and went up into the hill country and came to the Eshcol Valley, scouting the land. They took some of the fruit from the land in their hands, carried it down to us, and brought us back a report for the land, and brought us back the report. The land Yahweh our God is giving us is good. But you were not willing to go up. You rebelled against the command of Yahweh your God. You grumbled in your tents and said, Yahweh brought us out of the land of Egypt to hand us over to the Amorites in order to destroy us because he hates us. Where can we go? Our brothers have made us lose heart, saying, the people are larger and taller than we are. The cities are large, fortified to the heavens. We also saw the descendants of the Anakim there. So I said to you, Moses speaking, don't be terrified or afraid of them. Yahweh, your God, who goes before you, will fight for you, just as you saw him do for you in Egypt. And you saw in the wilderness how Yahweh, your God, carried you as a man carries his son all along the way you traveled until you reached this place. But in spite of this, you did not trust Yahweh, your God, who went before you on the journey to seek out a place for you to camp. He went by fire. He went in the fire by night and in the cloud by day to guide you on the road you were to travel. When Yahweh heard your words, he grew angry and swore an oath. None of these men in this evil generation will see the good land I swore to give to your ancestors, except Caleb, the son of Jephunneh. He will see it, and I will give him and his descendants the land on which he has set foot, because he remained loyal to Yahweh. Yahweh was angry with me also because of you, and said, you will not enter the land either. Joshua, son of Nun, who attends you, will enter it. Encourage him, for he will enable Israel to inherit it. Your children, who you said would be plunder, your sons, who don't yet know good from evil, will enter there. I will give them the land, and they will take possession of it, but you are to turn back and head for the wilderness by way of the Red Sea. You answered me, we have sinned against Yahweh. We will go up and fight just as Yahweh our God commanded us. Then each of you put on his weapons of war and thought it would be easy to go up into the hill country. But Yahweh said to me, tell them, don't go up and fight, for I am not with you to keep you from being defeated by your enemies. So I spoke to you, but you didn't listen. You rebelled against Yahweh's command and defiantly went up into the hill country. Then the Amorites who lived there came out against you and chased you like a swarm of bees. They routed you from Seir as far as Hormah. When you returned, you wept before Yahweh. But he didn't listen to your request or pay attention to you. For this reason, you stayed at Kadesh as long as you did. And that is Numbers, or excuse me, here we go, Deuteronomy. And that is Deuteronomy chapter 1. All right, let's think about this text again. This really, chapters 1 through 3 explains how they got to where they are, how this generation has ended up now again at the doorstep of Canaan, and why it is that this previous generation had to pass, that even the leadership of Miriam and Aaron and Moses, why they can't even enter in, why it's going to be Caleb and Joshua being the ones to enter in. I just want to stress again in verses 1 through 3 that these are the words that Moses spoke, that Moses told the Israelites everything Yahweh had commanded him to say to them, that Moses began to explain this law. So the emphasis certainly is on Moses speaking, that he spoke and explained God's message. Though it is Moses being the mouthpiece, this is the message of Yahweh. Again, it began, the way where he begins is while they're at Horeb at Mount Sinai. They've been here long enough. They've been receiving the law long enough. They've been making preparations to enter into the land long enough. Now it's time to go to this great land. It's time to go to this great land, to take possession of it, the land that Yahweh had promised to their fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. God had entered into a covenant with them. He was their covenant God. They were his covenant people, and it was time for them to go and to take what had been promised. There is emphasis here on not just this being the land that's going to be promised, that is soon going to be realized. They'd already realized The fact that God's promise to Abraham concerning his descendants being very numerous, that had been realized. That's explained here through the fact that Moses said, listen, I couldn't judge all y'all. Not because, God would not give me the capability, but because there's so many of you. You were as numerous as the stars of the sky, which is hearkening back to what we see in Genesis chapter 15 and verse number 5, that that's exactly what Yahweh tells Abraham is going to happen, that your descendants, that look up at the stars, your descendants are going to be as numerous as they. It's going to be as numerous as what you see in the sky. And certainly that was the case. And for that, there were many judges that were appointed to help to administer justice among the people. No matter who it was, justice was demanded. And you know what? If there's a case too hard for them, they needed to exercise some humility by bringing that before Moses and allowing him to do what he could do. Beginning of verse 19, we then set out from Horeb. Was it we? Well, in a sense, yes. He's referring here to all of Israel and really helping them to see that they are the new Israel. Yes, they're the second generation, but they very easily could get into the bad habits of previous Israel. So see yourself in them, but learn from their mistakes and don't make the same mistakes again. It's very interesting the way this is all framed here in Deuteronomy chapter 1, beginning verse 19, talking about the attempt to enter the promised land. They get there, and the text says that Yahweh your God has set the land before you. This is Moses saying, go up and take possession of it, as Yahweh the God of your fathers has told you. Don't be afraid and encouraged. Go take it. It's right here before you. It's a promise of God. He's strengthened you. He has equipped you. Go take it. But their response is, well, let's scout it out first. Now, that is a bit different than what we see in, at least the way it's described is different than what we see in Numbers chapter 13, where it says that God commanded them to appoint these. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that this is a direct contradiction. Everything that is said could be true. Moses could say, go take them. The people say, well, let's scout first. So God says, okay, send your scouts. Go check it out. Go see what you'll find. And unfortunately for them, they get so fixated on the difficulty of the land. Verse 26, you're not willing to go up. You rebelled against Yahweh. You grumbled in your tents. You were so worried about the Amorites. They're going to destroy us. You're so worried about the fortified cities and the large people and the descendants of the Anakim. You're terrified and afraid. Remember, Moses told them, do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. That's exactly what happened. Why? Because they weren't trusting in Yahweh. They were not displaying covenant loyalty here in this moment. They were not respecting God's promises and the fact that he would fulfill them. They completely forgot about what what Yahweh had done through Moses in Egypt as he pronounced judgment against the Egyptian gods and against Pharaoh and the people. They forgot about how God constantly provided for them. That's really the emphasis of this chapter, that God constantly provided for them, that their needs were met, and he helped them in every challenge that they faced. He went before them by night in fire and by a cloud during the day, and yet they forgot. Therefore, God punished them. None of these men in this evil generation will see the good land I swore to their fathers. Only Caleb. And why Caleb? What separated him from the rest? Well, it was the fact in verse 36 that he remained loyal to Yahweh. He maintained covenant loyalty and faithfulness. He trusted in me. And for that, he was able to enter in. Notice verse 37. Yahweh was angry with me. So this is Moses speaking. Yahweh was angry with me also because of you. Because of you. And said, you will not enter either. Why? Why because of them? Was it the people that struck the rock instead of speaking with? No, it was Moses. But maybe from Moses' perspective, hey, if you would have been faithful, we'd already be in the promised land, and that never would have happened. You can kind of see Moses' frustration, and really what he's saying is not entirely untrue. Obviously, there's personal accountability that is needed, and he exercised that by the fact that he's going to suffer for it as well. But he is probably frustrated with people that I don't get to enter in because all of y'all were unfaithful and y'all didn't trust in him, and now we're all having to suffer for it. Well, there's that whole thing where they say, well, you know, we can fight. We can do it. We can go and we can take these people. Well, had the size of the people changed? Had the fortification of the cities changed? Well, no. It was just that now they understood that their lack of faithfulness and trusting earlier put them in a bad spot. So they're going to go and try to make up for it. But in doing so, Yahweh says, don't do it. Or in trying to do so, he says, don't do it. I'm not going to be with you. But they didn't listen. They rebelled against Yahweh's command. They defiantly went up into the hill country. And what's so funny is that this land flowing with milk and honey, there were some bees in the land, it seems. They're described here as being chased out like by a swarm of bees. The imagery here is consistent with the land flowing with milk and honey. And yet when they returned, they wept loudly before Yahweh, but he didn't listen. He didn't pay attention. Why? Because they did not listen. They did not pay attention to him. And so now they were having to suffer. This is why you spent so long at Kadesh. This is why. Because you did not listen, because you did not obey. This is why this journey that should have taken, mind you, 11 days. It should have only taken you 11 days. This journey's taken 40-ish, not days, not weeks, but years. Not because God didn't provide for them, but because they failed to trust. What a lesson that is for us. God always provides. The question is, will we trust? We'll continue looking at this recounting of Israel's history tomorrow as we read together in Deuteronomy chapter 2. Hope you will be able to tune in then for that reading as we read together tomorrow on May the, let's see, what's today? Today's the, I just went blank, so 9th. Tomorrow's going to be the 10th. We'll be reading together on tomorrow, Wednesday, May 10th, here in Deuteronomy chapter 2. I hope you can tune in then. We have a couple of birthdays that took place yesterday and today. Bill Simpson and Karen Berry had birthdays the past couple of days. Very happy birthday to the two of them. Certainly blessings in our church family. Thank you again for tuning in today. Have a great rest of your Tuesday, everyone. And we'll be back at it again tomorrow. Take care and God bless.